Peter, gosh, your Spanish is getting a lot better. You're improving.
Buenas tardes.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to begin by expressing my warm thanks to the government of Spain and the foreign ministers for the extraordinary organization of this double meeting here. Defense ministers yesterday, foreign ministers today. I think everyone has been impressed by the beauty of Toledo. Many people didn't know Toledo, but they said they're going to come back soon because it really is an extraordinary city. It is beautiful, its architecture, its history, walking in the evening, visiting monuments, the synagogue, the cathedral. Really excellent organization, beautiful setting. And I think Spain has shown off its best. It was almost a bit too much, actually, because it was difficult to get the ministers to work. A lot of them wanted to go out again. But anyway, we've had 2 very intense days of work. And the first day, ministers of defense, as I told you yesterday.
Discussing with the ministers of foreign affairs on 2 main topics, Ukraine and the Niger coup d'etat and the situation in the Sahel. We haven't exhausted the topic. We will have to continue working on that. But it's important that today it was a defense military approach. Today has been foreign relations, foreign affairs, diplomacy, looking for peace, providing support to Ukraine, but also looking for a way of ending the war in a just manner. We have had the chance of having with us, and thank you for inviting him, Dmytro Kuleba, the Minister of Ukrainian Foreign Affairs, which comes to almost every one of our meetings. He explained the latest developments on the ground. He explained the situation of the counteroffensive. The defense minister yesterday already did it, but today he insisted on the bombing, the continued bombing of civilian targets, in particular schools. On the first day of the school year, several schools have been bombed by drones, and it was not an accident. It was done on purpose. And many teachers have been killed by this bombing. We knew all the developments on the ground, and we also knew about the diplomatic efforts in order to look for a better understanding of the causes and consequences of the war that could lead to meetings to try to look for peace, but a just peace. A peace that could prevent Ukraine from losing its territorial integrity or its sovereignty. If yesterday we talked about military aspects, today we went to the non-military aspects, which are mainly financial, because we need to support Ukraine in a manner predictable and sustainable, not just next month or next week, but the long-range lenses, and showing that the aggressor, that we are standing with Ukraine today, tomorrow, and always, during the war and after the war. And the core element of this support is the financial support for the military supplies through the European Peace Facility and the training of Ukrainian soldiers through our European Union Trading Mission for Ukraine. On the first, you know that the High Representative has the capacity, according with the treaties, of presenting proposals to the Council. Well, at the end, the Council will decide, as always. At the end, it's the Council who decides. But the proposal of defining a sustainable and long-term way of supporting Ukraine. It's about our proposition of a ceiling of 20 billion euros, 5 billion per year in the next 4 years. The ministers has been discussing about that. I think that the feedback I got from them of this proposal has been positive, and in any case, they have shown a strong resolve to continue supporting Ukraine with military assistance as long as needed. The discussion will continue in the Council, and I hope that we will reach an agreement by the end of the year. At the same time, I have to regret that the 8th EPF tranche are still blocked, and I hope that we will be able to unblock on the next weeks. But this is a problem that still is pending to be solved. On the training mission, I have proposed a new target of 40,000 soldiers being trained in the next month. And the minister supported this proposal. By the way, many of the soldiers have been trained here in Toledo, in our military academy. Then we discussed the peace formula. The peace formula presented by President Zelensky is the only one that has been gaining traction, and is the only one who's being discussed in the international fora. There have been many others, from China, from Brazil, from South Africa, from the African Union. All of them have been wiped out. None of them has been in the stage. The only one is the 10-point peace formula presented by President Zelensky and discussed in Stockholm and in Saudi Arabia. We have been discussing this peace formula and the way that we can continue supporting it and making it the center of the international discussion about how to build a just peace in Ukraine. We also have discussed about the grain deal or the non-grain deal. And I think that the ministers coincide on their perception that Putin, with his aggression, is not only harming Ukraine, but countries that are thousands of kilometers away. And for the first time, we see these countries blaming Russia for the consequences of their attitude by deliberately weaponizing food when they suspend the Black Sea Green Initiative. Yes, it has a negative impact, and even on countries who are supporting or not blaming Russia, they are suffering the consequences. The meeting between Russia and the African Union was a completely diplomatic failure, and I think that Russia is losing ground in the international community. We have to continue intensifying our outreach in support of Ukraine during the week at New York, the G20 summit, and continuously fighting Russia disinformation around the world. This war is also a war of narrative. It is a war of storytellers. How do you present this war? And we have to fight this war, because you don't only conquer surface, you conquer the brains, you conquer the minds of the people. And this war has to be fought. I am summarizing a long discussion. Then we jump to the situation in Niger. And here also we had important guests. And thanks to you, to the Spanish presidency, for inviting the president of the ECOWAS Commission and the commissioner of the ECOWAS Commission for Peace and Security, and also the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Niger. And when I'm saying Niger, I am meaning the legitimate government of President Bazoum. You know that in this meeting there is a lunch with guests which is being shared by the presidency of the Council, and it was a fantastic idea to invite these African leaders because their testimony and the explanation was very, very much interesting, well articulated, and quite clear. We listened to their views on the situation in Niger and the Sahel, as well as the ECOWAS responses and intentions regarding the restoration of the constitutional order in Niger. We haven't talked about Gabon because Gabon is not a member of ECOWAS. The ministers reiterated the strong condemnation of the military coup in Niger, called for the release of President Bazoum and his family, and to go back to the constitutional order. This is something that has been involving in particular France. We expressed our solidarity with France, in particular for the situation of his ambassador, which is being in a difficult situation in Niamey. Permettez-moi de m'exprimer en français.
Allow me to express in French my solidarity with France. We expressed full support for the efforts of ECOWAS and in favor of putting maximum pressure on the Niger junta. We are in agreement on suspending development aid, not just the EU, but all the member states as well, and any cooperation that is not does not directly affect the population will be suspended. We have also decided to start the process of creation of a legal framework for individual sanctions to affect the plotters and along the lines of what was indicated by ECOWAS. They explained what the situation is on the ground and how they, ECOWAS, would envisage a military deployment on the ground. I repeat that for us it's African solutions to African problems.
As I said yesterday, we are ready to consider, to study any proposal coming from the ECOWAS. I want to repeat the idea. President Bazoum was the only authority democratically elected in the whole Sahel. The minister said that, and it was a good summary of the situation. And President Bazoum, I want to give an homage to his personality. It's an extraordinary person who is resisting. He is not in jail, but is as if he was in jail, deprived of electricity for more than 1 month, being under pressure to resign, and he's not willing to resign. And we have to continue supporting him. We studied also the situation in the coastal countries of the Gulf of Guinea. This becomes more and more crucial since the jihadist terrorist threat is growing. 80% of the territory of Burkina Faso is out of the control of the government. Many Nigerian soldiers have been killed by the jihadists after the coup d'etat.
We need to find a way of revisiting our Sahel policy given developments. There's also Gabon, of course, which since yesterday is also in the throes of a coup d'etat, and its institutions left something to be desired. But that does not justify a coup d'etat. But there is nevertheless a difference between Gabon and Niger. Each situation needs to be assessed on its merits. Anyway, we would like an inclusive dialogue ensuring human rights, democratic rights. It is the best way. It is better than the use of force to ensure that the will of the Gabon people is adhered to.
We call the SRE authorities to guarantee safety and freedom of movement along the Lachit corridor. We discuss about the situation in Middle East, in particular in Palestine territories. We are going to have meetings during UNGA Week in New York about it, and many other issues that I don't have time to summarize. but the important thing is Ukraine and Niger. But I want to make two announcements. First, on the Western Balkans, the Spanish presidency is proposing, and I think it's a good proposal, to hold a ministerial meeting together with the Western Balkans ministers, and we will do it at the end of next month, together with the Spanish presidency and following other events related with the Balkans, like the Berlin process. I think it's very important that the ministers under the Spanish presidency take stock of what's happening in the Balkans, and that on the 14th of September, I will take a new meeting of the high-level dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia as facilitator of this dialogue to look for solutions. The issue of enlargement has been floating over our discussions. Ukraine has to become a member of the European Union, the Western Balkans also, quickly. I think that the war in Ukraine has had a collateral effect, that is to speed up the enlargement process, which is certainly a merit-based process. Each state will become a member when fulfill all the conditions. But at the same time, I think it's good to fix a political target, an horizon, in order to give a political impetus to the process. And also for us, because yes, we too have to be prepared for an enlargement that could affect to 10 more members of the European Union. So it's worth for them to be prepared, in particular Ukraine, that will need a lot of support, but also for the European Union in an horizon that at the same time represents the fulfillment of the conditions, otherwise it will not happen, but proposing a horizon, a kind of a time target, could mobilize our energies and the energies of the candidate members, candidate states. I've been too long. I'm sure my colleague and friend, Minister Alvarez, will complement my explanation. And thanks again for this extraordinary hospitality that has enlightened Spain in front of all European member states.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking the High Representative for the leadership he's shown once again throughout this informal council meeting, where there were two absolutely crucial points to be addressed, crucial for the security and prosperity of Spain as well as the EU. I'm thinking, of course, of the situation in Ukraine and the recent developments in Niger, which, of course, will have an impact on all the Sahel region. The foreign ministers have renewed their commitment to the process led by the High Representative. I'd like to thank the government of Castilla-La Mancha and the local authorities for all the support they have provided over the last few months to make this the success that it has been. I particularly would like to thank the team of the Foreign Ministry and the External Action Service as well, who've made it possible to have this meeting in the best possible circumstances. And many have already, I believe, made reservations to come in a private capacity to Toledo because they were so impressed by the city and its people. Now, when it came to Ukraine, we all renewed our commitment to all types of effort to gain peace, to get peace in Ukraine as soon as possible. And that was also the case when we met Dmytro Kuleba in person, the foreign minister of Ukraine. I had a bilateral meeting with him this morning as well. And Spain made clear what its commitment is politically, diplomatically, and from the humanitarian standpoint. we will provide that support that we have been providing for as long as is necessary. Now, in addition to that, at my bilateral meeting with the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, I was able to address the Ukrainian candidacy. We await a report from the Commission in October, but Spain is committed to launching that process subject to the opinion of the Commission. And that was my message to Minister Kuleba. In addition to the situation in Ukraine, we, of course, had to deal or address the situation in Niger, and we invited the Commission President of ECOWAS. I had a bilateral meeting with him yesterday so as to hear how we can help ECOWAS. ECOWAS is the only regional actor with the legitimacy necessary to act in such a situation, and has always been committed to stability and peace in the region. The legitimate foreign minister of Niger also traveled here, and it was not an easy trip to tell us what the situation is on the ground. I was in Niger in June, and I know what the commitment of President Bazoum to democracy is like, how strong it is, and the messages that he can count on our support and that of the EU in this instance. As the High Representative has said, we call on behalf of the Spanish government for respect of democracy and a return to constitutional order in Niger. We said this immediately after the coup. We will provide no further aid except humanitarian aid until there is a return to democracy. We have also made it clear that we demand immediate liberation of President Bazoum and his family, who are illegally detained in extremely difficult conditions. This morning, we heard of a further African coup, or yesterday morning, but again, as the High Representative has said, the government of Spain is very clear on that too. Solutions to African problems must be African solutions. That is the point of departure. But Spain supports those African solutions, and all the various options that have been raised and discussed with ECOWAS will be considered, and we want to see a peaceful outcome and a return to democracy. So in those interests, we will always hear all suggestions and proposals and consider them, anything coming from the ECOWAS, that is. At the end of the day, the situation in Niger and the Sahel more broadly does represent a threat to peace, security and prosperity in the broader region, but it is also the case that, as Spaniards know all too well, it is also a threat to the EU, because Africa is our neighboring continent, and the Sahel region are our direct neighbors. So we cannot stand by to witness democracy violated in this way. And of course, we have a partnership on various significant areas with that part of the world. So as the High Representative has said, difficult discussions, difficult situations, but vital to the peace and security of Europeans as well as our neighbors.
I'm afraid only two questions because everything has been said anyway and we have a plane to catch. So, primera pregunta a la prensa española.
First question for the Spanish press, please.
Sí.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Quería hacer una pregunta.
I have a question. Since this morning, several things have happened. First, the removal of the French ambassador's immunity. So my question, when you say African solutions for African problems, does that mean that Europe, and Spain in particular, Minister Alvarez, will not provide military support to ECOWAS, as France perhaps was looking for? And then a second question, what do you mean that Europe was wrong in some things in Africa? So what are you going to do? So what about this military plans that the ECOWAS is having for the region? Could you comment on that? Yes, if the minister allows me, I don't think Spain is going to do anything different to what we are all going to do together at an EU level. It's not that Spain aligns itself with EU policy. They are taking the lead. Sorry, I'm taking pulling the rug out of the feet from the minister, but I think we could be as clear as we could possibly be, because there are so many outstanding issues. The situation is so fluid. There's so much uncertainty. Obviously, the president of ECOWAS and the ministers this morning were extraordinarily clear. As the minister said, really, they should become real diplomats. They gave us a lesson on how to summarize a situation as complex as this in such simple terms. Now, we are going to apply an individual sanctions regime, very much in line with what ECOWAS is going to do. Individual sanctions on the junta. We're going to ask for humanitarian exemptions so that the stopping of the trade of goods doesn't have an impact on the people. We don't want the second poorest country in the world to suffer even more. Third point, we have provided ECOWAS our full support, but of course we want to know what it is exactly they're planning to do. We are open to considering specific, fleshed-out proposals from ECOWAS. We will have to assess them, and we are willing to study any proposals, consider them, be it sanctions, be it diplomatic action. And we want to make it abundantly clear that we are not going to allow the coup perpetrators to remain in Niger. But of course, we need to know what ECOWAS wants, what they want to do, and we will consider that. On your first question, like many other colleagues around the table, I expressed my solidarity with France, given the decision taken by the junta. It's not the decision taken by the legitimate government of Niger. On military intervention, I think I answered this morning. You asked the same question this morning. The government of Spain supports African solutions for African problems, and we support the decisions that have been taken so far by ECOWAS. ECOWAS is a great partner of Spain in development cooperation, political dialogue, and what they are doing, as the ECOWAS always does, is to support democratic and constitutional order. And at the moment, there is a political dialogue ongoing to try and reason with the junta, and we support both decisions taken by ECOWAS that they've taken so far. If they have other decisions to take, we don't know what they are yet, then, as the High Representative said, we are going to discuss it among ourselves.
And the second question, Nicolas Gros.
Monsieur le représentant, bonjour, Nicolas Gros-Viret, B2.
I'm representing the French press. I'll speak a little more loudly, perhaps. But if I understand correctly, on Niger, priority will be given to the diplomatic means, and the idea of supporting military intervention is not currently the subject of a consensus at European level. There isn't agreement to proceed with such a thing. And then when it comes to the leaders claiming to have won an election, what would you propose them as a transition? Well, of course, we are in favor of a diplomatic solution. It stands to reason. Nobody wants military intervention. Of course, diplomatic efforts come first. That is what ECOWAS is doing. How many times has ECOWAS gone to Niamey? We heard from them this morning. They've been in person. And we heard how they were allowed to visit President Bazoum in his home, where he is living without electricity in terrible heat and sometimes without water. So they know very well what this junta is about. They've been to visit, they've been on the spot, but they continue to seek a diplomatic solution. But what will happen later on, further down the line, will be up to ECOWAS. I don't know what it is. A military coup d'etat is never a solution. But we must distinguish between the situation in Niger and that in Gabon. As I said before, Niger and President Bazoum, well, he was the only democratically elected president in the Sahel. And the elections in Gabon, well, we have our doubts on their validity, on their democratic validity. So you can't treat them as one and the same, the two cases. Of course, we demand inclusive political dialogue in both cases, but we want real democratic regimes, not window dressing.
This day, and see you next week in Cádiz. Hasta pronto.
Bueno, Pepe, muchas gracias.
No hemos ganado el sueldo, ¿eh?
¿Te vuelves a Madrid ahora?
Corriendo.
Te quedas estos días, ¿no?
No.
¿Te vas a Bruselas?
No, me voy a...
légitime du Niger et nous saluons cette position de l'Union européenne. Elle a été confirmée. Évidemment, nous avons répondu à leurs questions légitimes et légitimement, les gens se posent des questions et nous avons répondu. Et je pense que maintenant, les clarifications que nous avons apportées permettent à l'Union européenne de consolider ses positions sur ce qui s'est passé au Niger. Voilà, je vous remercie. Ce que d'abord nous soutenons, nous apprécions déjà le soutien politique et moral de l'Union européenne. Évidemment, ce que nous souhaitons de l'Union européenne, le président de la Commission l'a dit, c'est que l'Union européenne accompagne la CEDEAO. La CEDEAO étant le seul cadre unique, le cadre unique de gestion de cette question. Les décisions prises par le sommet des chefs d'État de la CEDEAO doivent être soutenues par l'ensemble de nos partenaires, à commencer par l'Union européenne, en tout cas par tous les pays démocratiques. Donc voilà le message que nous sommes venus apporter et je pense que nous avons été entendus. Voilà, merci beaucoup. Merci. Voilà, thank you very much. Okay. C'est par là, non?